Welcome to Kyle and Dave versus the Machine. My name is Kyle.
And apparently I'm a puppet.
You're a gelfling, is what you are there, Dave.
Better than a Skeksis.
Oh, I know. I love their mouths. This is, of course, a podcast where a sentient machine is forcing us each season to watch movies from a specific year in order to prevent it from starting the apocalypse. That year just so happens to be 1982 this season.
By accident, just by chance. Yeah, no choice involved.
Not at all. The machine still threatens our lives if we don't review the films it asks us to, although we do tend to talk about the ideas of the movie rather than the movie itself. And today, we're going to be watching the film The Dark Crystal.
Are you going to throw some reverb on that? The Crystal.
Of course, a big thank you to our patrons over on Patreon. Their contributions help us continue the show since, the machine doesn't help us pay for these movies. Plus, each month we do a bonus episode over there. Dave, have you decided what our bonus movie is going to be this month?
Yes.
Is it going to be The Hospital or is it going to be Punishment Park? Because we left it up to you over on the Patreon.
It's going to be a surprise for our Patreon guests.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I've definitely put a lot of thought into that, and I've made a decision.
And it totally isn't just you remembering right now in the moment.
No, I mean that would insinuate that I just show up for these things.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, before we jump into our history with this film, Dave, I'm a tinkerer, right? I like to tinker with things.
Gross. Yeah, that's
you always see me tinkering our way. For new listeners coming aboard, you may not know this, but currently Dave and I are actually trapped legitimately in the year 1982. We are physically in the year of 1982. We are drinking old Coke. We are experiencing the Rubik's Cube.
Is that a thing already? Okay.
Was it by 82? I'm pretty sure it was.
I'm not going to Google it.
Anyways, but how did we get here? Quick backstory, just to fill everyone else in. I made this sentient robot who...
I made a robot back 3 years. And
it accidentally became sentient. I trapped Dave to start doing a podcast with me.
Right.
And then
Tinkering.
through some
it's disgusting
magical runes that we came across, we were thrown onto a spaceship. We had to travel all the way back only to find out that the Earth was 1982. And now, because of some bad business dealings...
the whole season. We were in 1971 for a while.
We don't need to make this 25 minutes long, Dave.
You started at day one, not me. I mean, could have started at this season.
And now, because of some bad business dealings, I blame Dave. DDS stole our own arcade from under us. And we had to hitchhike to this abandoned cabin in the woods. And that is where we currently are doing it. But I'm tinkering away again, Dave. I think I want to maybe build some more machines here again and just to see where it goes.
Oh, you're going to build a new machine.
I don't know about new machine.
From a shed in 1982.
Yeah, I found some old hardware out in the woods.
Yeah, it's going to turn out really well. I can't wait.
I can short circuit this. I can Johnny Five it.
Is Short Circuit out yet? That was a good movie.
No, I don't think the first one's out yet.
Well, technically brown face, so
not technically. It was brown face.
Doesn't hold up that well for that part.
Right. But I'm sure everything is going to turn out completely fine.
It's been great so far. You haven't made a single bad decision in 3 years.
That is our deep and rich story that we were building here week upon week.
Velvety,
on this podcast.
even.
Honestly, I think it's mostly the reason people tune into this is to learn what's happening with Kyle and Dave this week.
Just around the water cooler, and they're like, "Have you heard? They're in a shed. They're in a shed."
Oh my gosh, it's basically Breaking Bad level, the fandom that about what we're up to. We should get into our history here. I think the big one is this. What is your history with Jim Henson?
Oh, me and Jimmy. Jimmy's a good boy. I love everything that he's built. It's obviously culture forming for people of my generation. Right. We grew up on the Muppets, the Sesame Street, Muppet Show, and then this film. And I now have just this assumption that anytime I see a puppet on TV, it's designed and manufactured by the Jim Henson Company. That's not true anymore, but it was for a while.
But there is this kind of remarkable thing that even not that puppetry has really, I don't think, this is my own opinion, expanded since Jim Henson passed away. You know what I mean?
Our entire audience, yeah.
I'm just saying that if you ever see a puppet that looks Muppet-like,
Yeah, it's the same
it's
mechanics.
because they are emulating what he did, right? It's not
Yes.
like some auteur is coming and like, no, I'm the puppet master now, and has like this new
Well,
design that people are trying to emulate.
John Cusack tried in being John Malkovich, and he had a pretty emotive
That's
marionette.
right. That's
Yeah.
right. I totally forgot about that.
Mhm.
That's what he was doing. Uh, Here is my hot take about
Gross.
that specifically, because I'm just like you, of course. Like Jim Henson was, I think, deeply
Your
forming to
puppet
me as
daddy. Yeah.
like what I like what I enjoy, the humor that
Yeah.
I like.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know. There's just something about the Muppets themselves that is just very close to me. They do resonate with me a whole lot. I think it's just the like, whole idea about putting on a show. I think that's honestly the biggest thing because that's really what most of the Muppet movies, the Muppet Show was all about. That Sesame Street, of course, I grew up on. Um, and nobody remembers this except for me, I feel like. But there was this short lived Jim Henson show. God, 80, it was mid 80s, mid to late 80s, called The Storyteller, is what it was called. You can actually watch the whole thing on YouTube. Like the whole, every 13 episodes, I think, are up on there, which was literally just like old fairy tales, but told with like new Muppets. It wasn't Kermit or Miss Piggy or anything like that. It was just puppets telling these stories. And kind of like this movie, in the middle of completely adult and completely kid like it was kind of situated in the
We'll talk
in the
about
middle
that.
sort of thing.
This movie is not that kiddie, frankly.
We'll get into that. I don't think it's completely adult either, though. Like there's some pretty uh I don't know, gag moments, like light moments that are made for kids, in my opinion. But the
Wow.
80s were a different time, I
Gag
think, for
moments
children's
made for
entertainment.
kids.
So I think that is something that we will uncover here. Um, Anyways, the big thing is like Jim Henson was a big part of me growing up. I still remember when it was announced that he passed away. It was a big moment when I was a kid, and it was sad.
Shocking. Yeah, it
And if
wasn't
you
well.
want a real good cry, something that's also on YouTube is you can go and watch his funeral on YouTube. Uh, because it was broadcast. It was broadcast on
I'm just
television.
saying, why would you affect our listener? I'm
Mm-hmm.
assuming it's singular.
No.
Um, and tell them to go watch a funeral. You're such an asshole. Like, why
Well,
don't you
it's not
just
like you.
have
It's not
them
like it's an
look at a video
open
that
casket,
celebrates his
Dave.
life,
Jesus
right?
Christ.
Oh my God.
It's so beautiful because it's all the Muppeteers who come up and they do songs and stories and all that kind of stuff. And then the very last performance like totally breaks me. It's like it's so
It's not easy
beautiful.
being green. Yeah.
No, it's if just one person believes in you, actually, is what the
Oh,
song
that's
is that they sing.
I
Um,
was tearing up on Zoom
I
as we
am.
recorded
It's
this.
such
Yeah.
a beautiful moment. I know that you have a cold husk of a heart, Dave, so you're never moved by anything. But for me,
No,
it's
I
those
feel nothing. I feel
feel
nothing.
nothing.
I'm
So,
one step away from being an automaton. It's
anyways,
good life.
that is all backstory to what I was leading up to, which is like my hot take is this. I wish someone would come and take over the mantle of trying to make puppetry a thing. I think it's just a very interesting way to do storytelling. And no one has really tried to do it since Jim Henson passed away, outside of like the Jim Henson Company
Yeah,
that
I was gonna say they're still
occasionally
around.
does something. But there's not like people making feature-length films are like, we're just gonna use puppets. We're just going to use puppets and try and advance this art form into something that we
Well,
can do
they
feature-length films with.
they rebooted the Muppets a couple times, but if you're talking about
But that still has
someone
people in it. That's my thing.
reinventing it,
It's like
yeah,
I'm talking just puppets only.
yeah, trying to reinvent that idea. I mean, not all puppets in this film either. There were some children stand-ins, but
Yeah.
um,
But you know what I mean. Like it's not like, oh my
uh,
God, Steve Martin is here and doing a
yeah.
scene with Kermit the Frog.
Do you think there's an appetite for that? I think that even
I
if you
think
watch
there is.
kids shows, because I've been watching a lot of kids shows
This is
the
you
last
poo
eight
pooing it.
years.
This is you poo pooing it, Dave. But I
I'm
feel like this
asking
is
a real question here.
I'm going to give you a real answer, which
Well, you're
is
not. You're just talking over me before I've made
mhm.
my point. All right, keep going.
My point is this: is that this is
Yes,
like such a North American point of view. It's like, well, animation is just for children, and only children can enjoy animation.
that is not my point.
But
That
that
is
was what
not
you
my
were leading
point.
up with. There's no
No,
appetite. Well, you have to make it for people to have an appetite for it.
no, there's no. The question was not a statement. The question was, is there an appetite for puppetry? And I think there isn't. I think it moved too far into the realm of weird with if you go marionettes, and
Sure,
too far
sure.
in the realm of children because of the Muppets. And somewhere in the middle, when we watch The Dark Crystal, for example, it makes it very odd for the average viewer because you don't know which world you're in. So for someone to look at that and say, you know, I'm going to make a completely different uh, process of mechanizing a puppet without CGI, yeah, because we just rely on blue screen or
Sure.
whatever it is now. Um, you know,
I mean,
like
there's
we
some
just watched
compositing and
Paddington
stuff that's
again.
going on here
I'd
too.
rather
There
watch
is,
Paddington than watch, you know, like a furry Muppet doing Paddington.
I think, okay,
It's a
I
tough
think we're
one, right?
confusing two different things here. I'm really leaning into the Dark Crystal idea where the the idea is that it's only puppets on screen. Yeah. There's kids in costumes and stuff. I get
Yeah,
that,
I don't
but I'm
think
just
I don't
saying.
think the world cares. I don't.
I think that there
I
could
think you
be.
care
I know
because
that I
you're
care and
weird.
stuff like that, but
Yeah,
again, I
yeah.
think it's just that idea of no one has tried it or attempted to do something new with it. It's always relying on, well, we're going to do the Muppets again, or we're going to try and do a Muppet like stand up and stuff like that. But I don't think fundamentally, there's not a. I mean, fundamentally, I don't think there's a huge difference between this and stop motion animation, which you're still using kind of puppets sort of and clay and animate and moving it frame by frame and stuff, and there's this huge undertaking
Do
that
we?
goes with
Yeah,
it.
but do we have stop motion animation?
Leica is the only studio that's doing it. There's only one studio in the world that does it. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. That's the thing. It's all
Who
niche
did
now,
Bigfoot, I think, most recently. There's a new one coming out on Netflix. Again, it's by
Bigfoot
Leica.
was
It's the
stop.
only,
Oh, yeah.
and
Although
I guess
that's
Aardman
not
Studios
augmented.
does it too. And yes,
That's not put
it's
through.
augmented
Okay,
slightly, but
yeah,
I would
they
say
are
like
still using
80%
models.
of it is models, and they're
Okay.
moving it frame by frame and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
and I know the computer generating studios are trying to do the inverse of that and
Yes,
add in, yeah, this sort of
make
staggered
it
frame
look
rates to
like
make
it.
it look like it. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and doing these sort of like fusions between animated and 3D generated films. I think and that's the thing about innovation. There's a nostalgia. You're a big nostalgia guy. You know, you have a
Mm,
lot of like, oh, you know, things were better back when I was two,
no,
right?
that's a misrepresentation. That's such a misrepresentation of my point.
Whereas I look at it, I'm like, you know, the Dark Crystal has not aged that well. We'll talk about that.
We will talk
And
about that.
yeah, do we want that with a high? Oh, Did you watch the show on Netflix? I didn't actually watch it, but the
We'll get to
prequel.
that. I want to have a conversation about that
So
as
maybe
we wrap up.
maybe it has your answer there. Yeah,
Again, but it's the same property. I'm looking for like new
I'm just saying.
things and
Clearly, you
stuff
didn't
like that.
like it, but okay, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the movie.
No, I think there is. I think that I just want someone to try it out and see what opportunities are there, because the artistry that goes into the
Oh,
making
it's
of these
crazy.
creatures is like off the charts, like
Yeah,
bonkers, like what they have to do to make this all work and feel seamless for the most part.
but do
um
people care
and I think
anymore?
it's fantasy.
I
I think it
don't
has
know.
to be fantasy first. What the Dark Crystal does, it
Of
has to be
course.
kind of an
Yeah,
otherworldly feel to it.
yeah.
My position is that I think there's just someone out there that could do it.
I
It
just
just
don't think there's an
requires someone to
audience for
try
it.
it. It's a hard
I,
sell. I get it. It's a hard sell.
I don't know, man. I
But
mean, I think I agree with you in the artistic intent. Like it would be
mm,
cool for someone to be creative with it. But in the climate, in the world we live in, the movie environment we live in, there's nobody's funding this shit because you will never get a mass audience to sit down in a theater,
but
shell
in our world,
15
we don't
bucks
need
to
a
watch a
mass
puppet.
audience. We only need niche audiences anymore. So you only
I
need
don't
like
know.
that small portion of the
Oh, like
public to care.
push it to Netflix. Well,
Yeah.
they tried Dark Crystal.
Um. Last point, and yeah,
There might
fine,
be
we'll move
more
on.
that we
Last
don't
point,
know.
and we'll
There might
move
be
on.
European films or something. I don't know.
Repeat that. Sorry.
No, I'm trying to think. Is there like a European film or an Asian film or an indie film that's done this and we're just not, it's
That's what I
not
can't
coming
think. I
up?
mean, the
I feel like
closest is going to be
maybe.
Team America. That's the only thing I could really think about. But again, that's marionette weird things that
Oh
they're
man.
intentionally making a joke about the
You
fact
want
that
to talk
they're
about
puppets.
the coffee scene in Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid and
Mm-hmm.
the puking scene. That's
Yes,
a funnier version of that joke.
fine. It's the same joke, but whatever. Um,
Yeah.
what you brought up there is what I think is kind of interesting. Obviously, there's a lot of effort and time and care that goes into the making of puppetry, and you have to be trained a little bit on how to maneuver them and stuff.
A lot,
I'm
I would
actually
say. Yeah.
fascinated that there isn't more indie films done that way, who can't afford like CG or like high special
It's
effects.
too
Like, let's
niche,
just
too
make
expensive.
puppets.
No, it's too expensive to do well. The thing about puppets and what I think, I mean,
Mm.
I'm just going to presume what makes Jim Henson special is that, I mean, obviously puppets and marionettes have predated Jim Henson by like 1,000 years. You know, this is
Easily.
a
Yeah.
classical idea of putting on shows, not just for children. But he was able to imbue this sense of life to them. You know, they're emotive, how he mechanized how they speak, how their arms work. And then with the more advanced models, as they got a bigger budget, and we start seeing, like, even with the sketches, like they have not gills, but their bodies moving
Flaps and
as they
stuff that they're
breathe,
manipulating and
flaps.
stuff.
Yeah, you know, that stuff is so next level. That's not the cheap stuff. That's not a guy
No,
putting a sock on his hand. I
true
mean,
enough.
that's Ed the Sock or fucking
Yeah.
what's that, Champion Dog, or you know, those assholes that
Triumph,
are
the insult comic
Triumph.
dog. Yeah.
Um, so that's low budget,
Sure.
and that stuff does exist. I'm sure if you
Yeah.
YouTube
Yeah.
it, you'll get all kinds of weird shit. But if you want to do this cinema quality, you got to pay. You got to pay real money now, because it's hard. It's got to be hard. It's got to be hard to put these things together. I couldn't even tell you where to start. I
I
would get
know.
a piece of
It's
felt and I would just start to
even
cry.
even reading up on the making of this movie, I'm like, geez, like just to talk about the Skeksis specifically, it required two people because one person was using their left hand to control the face and
Yeah.
mouth and all those things. One was doing their right hand, and then the second person had to do the left hand. So you had to
Well,
coordinate with two people to make them walk around.
the what are they called? The aesthetics or the
Yeah, yes. I've watched this
the
movie like 3 times, and I still
me
can't
too, but
remember what
who
all their
cares?
names are.
But they're not really in the movie, right?
I
Other
know,
than
yeah.
to
There's
mirror, I
wandering
mean, we'll talk
around.
about that, but they have four arms, right?
Yes.
And they have stuff like that. It's cool. Like I
Well, I
love
mean,
it.
have you
But
ever seen how like Big Bird it was moved around?
um not inside, but there's more
So
than
the
one
inside
person
of
involved, but
Big
yeah.
Bird, right, is like it's someone
The feet.
inside, right? So the
Yeah,
feet are
yeah.
being controlled by the feet. Your right hand is up doing the mouth, and then there's a seesaw mechanism that controls the arms.
Arms. Oh, so it's
So
still only one puppeteer
it's
in
still
there.
just one person, but
That
that's
guy.
why.
What's his
But
name?
it's this
Yeah.
weird thing you never see like, or very rarely will Big Bird like lift both hands at the same time. It's
Mm,
because it's a seesaw thing, so you have to keep maneuvering it exactly how you want to.
so that's the
It's
thing. Like, how
wild.
do you? I mean,
Come
we
up with
wouldn't know
that.
how to answer this question, but no, how do you take a step away and above that?
Hmm.
That's a tough question, right? So maybe people are trying, they just can't make a puppet that tops a
Yeah,
Muppet, you know?
I
Like
think
that,
that
your
has to be the
favorite
case.
bear, right? What's his name?
Bobo, I think is what his name is.
Hilarious.
Yeah,
But he's, you know, his fingers move like
yeah.
the 90s created some Muppets where even today you're like, oh man, like that looks like a real
Right.
being, even though
Well,
we know it's not. So,
to that point, like you talk with any actor who like guests on Sesame Street or is in
right.
a Muppet movie, it's like you're talking to the Muppet, even though you know the guy's right there who's
Yeah, yeah.
controlling it. It's like I'm talking to the Muppet, which is
Yeah,
like the
that's something
hilarious thing, right?
magical. At
Yeah.
least as a viewer. I mean, we don't
Mhm.
know behind the scenes. Maybe they all hated each other, but
Maybe. Well, discussing that, Frank Oz, what is your relationship with Frank Oz? Because he's the
I don't know.
co-director
I
of this
mean,
movie.
yeah, he's directed some movies, voiced Yoda, involved with a lot of
Well, he's Miss Piggy as well.
Miss
Let's not
Piggy,
forget.
right, right. Sorry. I mean, what's her name in this? Augur or whatever. It's
Agra.
like a female Yoda.
Hmm.
And what did he direct? The Tower and
Well,
yeah, with
he
Ben
did Little Shop
Stiller.
of Horrors. He did
Yeah,
Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. He
yeah.
did
What about Bob
yeah, there's another big
and
one though too, and I'm just totally
Death at a
blanking on.
Funeral? Sorry, I'm just looking at
Yeah, so there's a
his.
bunch of good ones. So
Yeah.
I kind of think a bit of an underrated comedy director, to be honest with you. I think he has a handful of kind of great culture forming movies. What's hilarious is like this happens with any even like animated show where there's people that do multiple voices. Like even in this, like, oh, that's a Jim Henson voice. Oh, that's a Frank Oz voice. Because they have like their 6 or 7, and it's kind of just variations on a theme. So it's really
Oh,
interesting.
he
As you
directed
hear,
Bowfinger.
oh, that's it. We talked about it. Yeah, great
You
movie.
suck. YouTube's right. We should just quit.
Call yourself interviewers. Don't know who Maureen O'Hara is.
You don't even know.
Fucking
I was just gonna
idiots.
say, you don't even know who Marino O'Hara is. Fucking quit.
For the record, we knew who she was. It's just like we
She's
hadn't
not in the
seen the.
movie, you fucking racist prick. All right,
Anyways,
it's getting to me.
beside the point.
If you like John Wayne, you're
Mhm.
listening to the wrong podcast. We'll just put that out there.
Yeah, until we talk about Rio Bravo, and I'll be like, "This is the best movie Western that he was ever in." Fight me. Uh, so yeah, Frank Oz. Frank Oz, great. He also appears as an actor occasionally. He was in Knives Out as the lawyer. So if you want to see a recent Frank Oz performance, that's a way to do it. This movie, what's your history with this movie? Did you see this like in the 80s at all?
I don't remember. my childhood. I mean, I've watched this several times. For this recording, I turned it on and I realized I've watched this maybe in the last 2 years. I
Mm,
think I tried to show Emerson thinking it was a kids movie and we had to turn it off.
right,
Okay,
right,
it
right.
is not. Um,
I'm
Previous
going to
to
continue to
that,
push back on that. I think it's actually
no,
very
it's
closely,
because you don't
very
have
clearly
children. It's because you don't have children.
it might not be a child's movie in 2022, but it's definitely a child's movie when it was released in
No,
1982.
no, this is a kind of movie where if you brought anyone younger than 12, they would have cried and left the theater. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that same thing happened to The Lion King, and that's still a kid's movie.
No, people don't cry in The Lion King.
Yes, they do when Mufasa dies. Spoiler alert.
I'm not talking about the emotional parts of this film. I mean, this movie's grotesque.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why should kids not be afraid?
Oh, wow. All right, we'll talk about that.
That was actually also Jim Henson's point of view too. It's like children should be afraid when they go and see movies.
Yeah, that's fine. But yeah. But I don't remember before that how often I've seen it. But yeah, I know of
Um,
it. I know in it, like what happens in it.
yeah,
And
I
yeah.
definitely knew of it. Definitely remember being not advertised, but like seeing in like the video rental stores and that sort of thing. There's comics I remember when I was a kid that I would
Oh
kind of
yeah.
see them in the comic store. Never picked them up, of course. So I knew of this movie for a long, long time, but I guess I was just a Labyrinth kid because I remember watching
I was
Labyrinth
gonna
a
say,
bunch
yeah,
of times.
this gets conflated. Like this would get confused with Labyrinth or
Hmm.
Neverending Story or
Yeah, 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 yeah.
there's a
So,
couple big
so
ones.
those are the ones I was watching, and so
Yeah.
for some reason, Dark Crystal just never came into my life until the
So when you ask
Netflix.
people if they've watched Legend and they're like, oh. Anyway, sorry, keep going. Sorry. Tom
I
Cruise is
just
like
want to
60.
see the cod piece that Bowie is wearing in Labyrinth. Uh, and so it was the Netflix series that came out, whatever that was, 3 years ago or whatever it
Yeah,
was,
pre-COVID.
4 years. It was pre-COVID for sure. I was like, okay, well, this is coming out. I guess this is a good excuse to watch this for the first time.
Ah, okay.
And so, really, the first time was in my 30s, is when I
You're already
watched The Dark
a
Crystal.
grown man. Okay. And
Grown man, and my position then.
you
We'll
were
see
like,
if
oh,
this
what is
holds
this for
up.
kids? I don't need to watch this. It's so fucking childish. Is that
No,
your reaction?
I was like, this is definitely made for kids. It really was. But here's my big issue at the time. Not issue. Sorry, let me back up. Throwing me off my game here, Dave. My position then, and we'll see if it's the same now, is just like I love the production design. Cinematography is great. There's some individual like cool like scenes and performances, but I think the main character is boring and the quest isn't all that interesting. And so I thought it was kind of like overpraised or like overvalued when I first watched it because it was like
Yeah.
I don't really get why everyone like loves because you have to if you're not as online as I am, Dave, you have to understand that people like love this movie. Like
Can I just
love this movie.
interject, Kyle? You
Mhm.
know, when you're on the internet, you realize the internet is designed to curb your ideas in an algorithmic fashion.
Sure.
That when you
But you
reference
think that
all these
you're above
people,
all that and that
that's
you're like
because
you
you're
have
in
the
a forum
Mhm.
that's called like we love darkcrystal.com. And
Yeah,
you're like, wow,
but
everybody loves this movie. Everybody loves it.
Dave's position though is that like I know objective truth and whatever my opinion is
No,
objective
no,
truth and no
not
one can get
object truth.
through.
I stay within the fact that I know what this means to me, right?
Yeah.
But I think
I this is a movie though I will say it's not that I don't understand why people would like this movie.
sure,
I'm sure
sure,
it's culture forming. I'm sure it
yeah.
has nostalgia for people, that
It's
sort of
got
thing.
stuff in it. Yeah, it's got some meat on the bone.
But as a first time viewer in their 30s, I was like, I can see the seams, not to
Oh
make a
yeah,
pun,
doesn't
to
hold up
this
that
that
well.
doesn't 100% hold up, even though I love a lot of the portions of it. Like there is
Yeah,
parts I do love about
yeah,
this movie. That's what I
but
remember. But we'll see
yeah.
about this viewing, what I think.
Okay.
Anything you wanted to add into that, or we're
No, I
good?
think I mirror a lot of that. Like because we spent all of our energy in the past,
Hmm.
nostalgia is of course bias forming. So I
Sure.
think that
Yeah, we're going to be
um
talking about Blade Runner probably here pretty soon.
oh yeah,
Talk
five
about
stars.
bias.
But I think that you know, especially this film, it ties into our childhood. So whether we actually like the Dark Crystal or not, just
Hmm.
seeing anything that's Jim Henson like, it already adds a sense of nostalgia. We're like, well, how do you even make a puppet that looks like a
Well, no,
broken bird?
yeah. I mean,
It's
it's
changing the
hilarious
way you
too, right?
appreciate the film, right?
It's hilarious too because I mean, I don't know. This is such a me thing. I'll just say this is squarely like my point of view, of course. But we talked so long last week about Swamp Thing, and
Mm.
yes, like based on a comic book, whatever. But it's like kind of a stupid name for a movie or for a property. Swamp Thing. The Dark Crystal is like, I need to see this or I need to read this. I don't know what it is. It's
Sure.
so evocative to me as being like, oh, well, I definitely need to know more about what this Dark Crystal is.
Yeah.
So it's like the complete opposite, probably problem between those two movies.
It's because it alludes to the quest, like
Mm-hmm.
even Legend, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
because that's the Tom Cruise babyface one, but Legend, Will Smith one, the vampire movie. When you see
I
that
am
on a
Legend. Yeah, yeah.
marquee, you're like, oh, what does that mean? I want to
Yeah.
be a legend. If you see like Swamp Thing, well, there's a thing. It looks like a swamp. It's pretty straightforward.
I keep telling you, we're gonna make Man Thing one year, Dave. And
Ugh.
okay, well, let's do this. I'm excited to jump back in and watch this movie again and see if my opinion stays the same or it changes. So we'll go thank some sponsors, and then when we return, we'll be talking a little bit more about the Dark Crystal. All right. Well, we have sat down. We
Podcast.
rewatched the Dark Crystal here on our very
A lean
dusty.
90 minutes. Yeah.
This 1 second. As this helicopter goes over my house. This really
Mr.
dusty.
Marshall, come out of your house.
We found you. Sat on this very dusty couch that we found abandoned here. I'm sure it's full of mice, which is great for me.
I thought I said lice, which is probably more likely.
More
Yeah.
likely. Well,
Mhm.
I mean, I have been itchy here the last few days, but that's beside the point. Dave, we watched the
Wow.
Dark Crystal here
Stop
again, of
bathing
course.
in the swamp. Yeah.
That was last week. So we watched this. But let's just think of a theoretical here. Let's say that you had gone to a fabric store. You're looking for some felt. Just need a bunch of felt. And a
I'm
young
at Fabric Land,
fabric
and this
land,
lady
you're looking
comes
for
up to
some
be like, "Hey,
felt. And a young kid comes running up to you and is like, "Sir,
why
sir,
is
sir,
there a
sir."
young kid at Fabric Land?" Okay, yeah.
It's just, well, in this
School
deep
project,
restriction,
school
that's what happens.
project. Yeah.
Sir, 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 my granny just gave me this new VHS copy of The Dark Crystal. Please tell me, what is it about? How would you?
It's about hell, kid. It's about
You fling your cigarette into his face.
yeah. How do you synopsize the Dark Crystal? A dark fantasy quest
Mm-hmm.
where a weird little, I don't know, how do you describe that character? Where it's not a child, an
No,
unlikely
it's
hero,
mostly a
must
teenager.
gross. I don't know, Kyle. What would you say? A
There is a prophecy that says that this teenager known as the Gelfling, and this race that there is in this fantasy world,
It's so
needs to
long
go
winded,
and
right?
put a shard into the dark crystal to make
Gotta
it
stick his
not
shard into a hole
stay
to
darkness
save
for
the
the
world.
rest of their lives. That's basically what this movie is about.
Sure, that sounds awful, but yeah, I mean, you've described the plot.
If you reduce anything, if you went to Star Wars, it's like some farmer has to go and overthrow the dark imperialist
Is he a
nation.
farmer? Are they farming something?
They're moisture farmers, Dave.
Moisture farm.
You
You can
fucking
farm
idiot.
moisture?
How many times have you seen Star Wars?
You farm moisture.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
And he's called a nerf herder. Come on, we know.
Huh. Nerf.
Mm-hmm,
Huh.
mm-hmm. Making jokes down at Toshi Station.
That's a hard one to synopsize in a way that a kid would appreciate. Just say, yeah, some kids got to save their planet by healing a dark crystal. How's that?
Yeah.
Healing a dark
Love
crystal.
Love it.
Healing
Works.
it.
And they're all puppets. Okay, Dave. Again, I know you've seen this before, but what were your impressions on watching the full thing again?
Yeah, it's okay. Like you mentioned in our preamble, I think it's a big drag that the marionette for the Gelfling and the voice acting are so wooden.
Hmm.
Wooden.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. because it really takes away from the performances from all the other characters, which are great. And the puppet manufacture, no, what do you call it? The puppet technology is unreal.
Yeah, it really is next level. There is
Yeah,
certain, I think,
the opening
characters and
sequence.
scenes are like,
Yeah,
gosh, I can't believe that is a puppet that they're manipulating right
yeah,
now.
yeah. The skeksis and the aesthetics
Hmm.
is just incredible. Those two intertwined races in particular are quite incredible because, yeah, these are living, breathing things. Like parts move and they're able to emote for the most part. There are some moments, of course,
Yeah,
where puppets look a little off kilter, but the marionettes for the Gelflings really flatten some of the narrative for me. Otherwise, I don't know what it was. I mean, it's pretty dark, so I yeah. I don't know what, Kyle. I thought I would like it more. Like I
yeah.
thought I would be really engaged in the fantasy narrative of it. But by the end I was like, like I don't know. It's fine. Yeah, it was fine.
The fantasy world is something that I definitely respond to. Again, that's just kind of my aesthetic that I enjoy. So I really am going to probably push back the most on your criticism that you think it's maybe too dark by the sounds of it. That's not my issue
No,
with
not for
this.
us. Not
Hmm.
for us. But as a billing as a kids movie. And
Sure.
I didn't look this up, but I'm pretty sure Jim Henson didn't market this to the Sesame Street viewers, right?
No,
This
but I think
is
there's a difference between a 3-year-old and an 8-year-old.
Well, you'd be surprised. I think that an 8-year-old, the first time one of those beetle monsters that come out,
Mm-hmm. Which are
that's
kind of
not
terrifying. Those are
that's not going
terrifying.
over well, man. Okay, that's not designed to kind of intimidate kids into some moral, understanding of right and wrong. That's just a pure puppet horror element, right? That's a disgusting, beautifully
I think
made
I
beetle creature,
I,
and that is not what kids can
mm,
handle, right? Maybe a
I think
tween, I don't know, but
I really do think that this might be a insular, very specific thing with maybe your son, which is doesn't make it less valid. I'm not saying that it's wrong that they might have that reaction to it, but I think broadly speaking, an 8-year-old would be able to handle this movie fine.
I don't know. I don't know. I I'm around a lot of 8-year-olds,
Hmm.
Kyle, not just my son.
Weird, but
And
okay.
yeah, when I meet his friends, some of them talk a lot of shit because they're human beings,
Yeah, yeah.
but they're also terrified of the most ridiculous things. There was a huge school panic about a bee.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I know, like, you can make the argument maybe in the 80s, nobody gave a fuck about what kids
Hmm.
were watching, right? To a certain
Hmm.
degree, right? So we may have been exposed to things that we presumably ought not to have been. And if we got scared, either your parents take you home or tell you to shut the fuck up and finish the movie. And maybe in the current climate, we're just not allowed to do that because someone will call child services on you. But when I see images like that, that to me is a language spoken to other adults
Hmm.
on a nostalgia of creating a fantastical world that, I miss about being a kid and reading these cool stories. Like kids that are even 12 are not reading Game of Thrones. They ought
Sure.
not to be, right? But that's this idea that, oh, well, we used to read Lord of the Rings. I don't know what's the problem. It's like, I don't know. I didn't find Lord of the Rings until I was a teenager, and it's fucking amazing. But I don't imagine I would have had the focus to get through that book when I was 10.
Sure.
I could read, but that's not what I was reading. I was reading abridged King Arthur books,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
stuff like that, right? So
We'll take out the
I don't know.
really bad bits of what's going
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
I
Well, they
mean,
were for
to
kids. Yeah.
to your point, I should just say I
Oh,
was
I
so
keep
close to
saying.
being one of those people like, well, I did this and I turned out okay. Like
No,
that's a
I am not okay.
justification.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
you do not want your kids to turn out like me.
But
Yeah, I'm
I think that
miserable. You can hear it in my voice.
I think I think the example like for our generation specifically, I guess if we want to say we're the same generation, but I'm so much younger than you,
Wow,
um,
wow.
is fairy tales,
Psychologically,
right?
yes.
Like if you were read any fairy tale or were exposed to any fairy tale as a kid, 1000%, I'm going to guarantee, unless your parents like really searched for it, you were not getting the actual Grimm's fairy tales.
Of course not.
Because if you read the actual Grimm's fairy tales,
They're
those are
psychotic.
so dark
Yeah.
and disgusting and are filled with like murder, pedophilia, like
Yep.
rape, like all over the place.
Yep.
So I was not exposed to the real tales until I got to university and took a children's lit
Okay.
class. where you like
Here's the
get
thing,
exposed to it, right?
and
So,
I don't know if this is true, but I think we project this idea that people actually read those stories to their children, and I don't know if that's true.
well, no,
I
because
think that
they were
they were all
oral
written.
tales that the Grimms went around and wrote down.
I'm just saying, like oral tales, meaning a bunch of drunk dudes around a fire
Sure.
talking shit about a scary story they heard once,
Hmm.
embellishing details and adding their mature experience. You know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know why, but I can't imagine, 8-year-old going, "Oh well, that lady got raped because she was a bad person." Like, no, that's just not how that language works,
Well, I
in my opinion,
mean,
right? These kids don't even
yeah,
have
I mean,
that
if you
depth of
to
moral
get into like the history
perspective.
of fairy tales, like the majority of fairy tales, at least if we're talking about like, the Germanic
Sure.
and into English ones, basically boil down to um, don't trust strangers and don't go to dark place like into the woods at night because you're gonna get eaten by a wolf. Which are like, yeah, but those are probably the two big things you're telling kids in the 1800s or 1700s, I guess, when those were being transcribed. So it's like, yeah, like I understand like the basis, but to your point, I'm sure too that when they were going around collecting these tales, like, oh, they'll really like this bit if I embellish this a bit more, and that
Yeah.
just gets
Which is because
retold through time.
like you, I looked it up in adulthood and I
Hmm.
started reading some of the
Hmm.
Grimms. I had to stop because I was like, whoa, you know what? This has gone so far out
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
I don't even want to continue this version of Rapunzel or something. Like this is psychotic.
Hmm.
So yeah, I don't know. This idea of like what is for kids is an interesting like what's a current challenging kids film?
Well, I think we talked about this too. Like the current state of, I would say, Pixar, specifically that studio, I think is pushing the boundaries of like what a kids movie is. Because I often think of like even Wall-E, which is not super recent anymore, but that's all about like environmental like
I know, but
um
the dressing, I think what made Pixar successful for a little bit is that they at least dressed their puppets in the most childlike
yeah, you
fashion.
get the Disney for like the big
The
eyes and that
visual.
sort of
And
thing.
then
Yeah,
they
yeah.
put the subtext, if you can understand the language, is an adult therapy session. So like if you're a kid and you don't understand, that this old man is having an existential crisis that he wants to die and that he can't live, without his wife,
Hmm.
that's not how kids read that. They're going to see a silly talking dog. They're going to see a chubby Asian kid who loves balloons. Like, they put both layers intentionally. Sorry, I'm thinking up. In Wall-E, you're going to see a
Hmm.
cute, broken
Robot.
short circuit ripoff, and
Yeah.
then
Watching
this
Hello Dolly.
pretty,
Yeah.
yeah, and then this pretty thing, and they don't talk. So it's like them just doing silly things. Whereas we're watching and we're like, oh my god, we're all going to die. This
Right,
is our
right, right.
future.
Well,
Like, what are they
I'm
going to
wondering
do?
what I was building up to is like uh the recent Lightyear that came out, which I haven't watched yet, I will
It's not
say.
good though
Well, that's
in
what I
general.
heard,
Yeah.
but it's like I also heard by a bunch of people with kids, like they didn't understand how it was a kids movie either. Like
It's
that was
not.
their
No.
major criticism. And I again, I just want to double down. I don't think animation needs to be just for children, but
No,
it
no,
was
it shouldn't.
advertised as a kids movie.
That's Disney's problem right now. Like,
Hmm.
post, well, I don't know. It's not just the MCU. They just have this problem where they don't know who they're pitching their projects
Hmm.
to. And they're kind of greedy. They want both the parents and the
Sure.
kids' money. So when I watch Lightyear, I mean, it's just not good. Yeah, the character designs um, they're not for children. A lot of them are quite aggressive, militaristic. The humor is not for kids, but the drama and the energy is not for adults either. Because as you and I know, like you watch any good animated film from even from America, it's not just like anime anymore. It's like any good animated film that specifically understands it's for adults. Some of the best movies, right? Because
Hmm.
they can actually play with the fabric of reality by pulling away, this visual language that we need. Um, but Lightyear is like it was like mashed potatoes. I don't know. It was just this
It's
thing.
this
Like
thing that exists. It's
it's
just content that they can
palatable. Yeah,
feed
you
into the
swallow it,
algorithm.
you feel
Yeah.
full, and it's shit, right? Like I didn't hate that I watched it. We finished it,
Right.
but
But
it's not rewarding. So
but you're never going to go back and be like, I need to see Lightyear again.
no. Like Toy Story, right? You watch Toy
Hmm.
Story, the kids love it because the dolls are talking and they're cute, but we watch it and we see this life drama and this ability for
Right.
friendships. And so I don't know. That's the successful version of
There
this
does seem
movie.
to be this hard middle ground that's trying to be, at least from my perspective, because it's like there's like the super childish things that I'm trying to mostly like I can think of TV examples um like Bear in the Big Blue House or whatever those like types of things are, or like those sorts of like very kid, like these are very
Okay.
kid. They
Like
almost,
Bears to
I feel like,
Bears,
speak down to
Dora.
the
Yeah.
audience. That's why I don't like
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
shows very much.
Okay.
Uh versus like this is a animated that we're saying is for kids, but it's like pretty dark and depressing, as like pretty heavy material. There has to be that middle ground where I think Pixar was hitting for so long, which is that I
Yes.
feel they've kind of lost a little bit.
Oh yeah.
I say all that, and there's also, have you seen Bluey at all or watched
No,
it?
I haven't watched it. No.
One of my favorite things. It is so good. Australian TV show. Each episode is like 8 to 10 minutes long.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, yeah, as in it's in the title card of Disney. We just
yeah,
haven't
yeah.
pressed play.
It's
Yeah.
not made by Disney. They just are the ones who get to show it in North America. I only watch it when I'm around my niece and nephew who love it, and I love it too. But what happens in every episode? It's a dad or a mom playing with their kids, but it's like amazing at the same time. And, like, there's a bad pitch for it, but everyone should watch Bluey because it's like the one kid show. Like, I could watch this a million times and not get bored with watching
Mm.
this, and like kids and adults can both like it for very different reasons. I think this is a really interesting um, line it kind of walks down. But getting back to
Well,
the Dark
all of this
Crystal.
leading back to Dark Crystal, I think it moves too far in the adult space. And there's not,
Perhaps I think
it's
it
pretty
might, but
like,
comparing this then to the Neverending Story, I think the Neverending Story is just as dark as this movie.
no, yeah, the Neverending Story has just as dramatic of a story quest,
Hmm.
but um, the lighting, the texture, the character design are fun. So even the bad guys are not gruesome,
Mm.
wet, slick, cruel looking, right? The darkness of that in the environment, everything is so wide. This thing's so claustrophobic.
It
Like you're
is, yeah.
you're stuck in these little caves and this, even when they're in the fen or where the fuck it is where he meets the girl, it's like this tiny
Closed in.
swamp and everything's eating him. I feel like where it um that's where it tells me it's not designed to play for kids. It plays on the idea of what kid visual language is, but it's 100% for adults who are dosing, frankly.
No, just because
Yes.
something is weird is not like, oh, this is made for people with LSD issues. I will.
Uh, isn't it though?
No.
Isn't it
So
though?
you can go as high pitch as you want, Dave. I'm still going to say no. I am going to double down on what I kind of said at the very beginning from remembering my past time watching this. Um, if I could bottle like the cinematography, the way this film looks as a visual palette, boy, do I wish more films looked like this nowadays. I get so bummed out by kind of, I know it's not every film, like hashtag not all films, but like the amount of times it's like, oh, they've really leaned into like the red filter, and like, oh, now they're
Mm,
really leaning into the blue filter. Like this at
yeah.
least has texture and interesting dynamics that they're playing with. It looks gorgeous, is what I'm trying to say. For a puppet movie, it's like really good looking, and that's the element that I really enjoy. I do like those most of those voice performances. It is Jim Henson who is the voice of the main Gelfling,
Gelfling.
Jen. But I agree. It's like I'm never invested in his journey. This
Mm,
is part of also my issue, and I know it again is a me issue, so I'll be totally upfront with my biases. I very much dislike prophecy storylines,
mm,
which happen a lot in fantasy fiction, which is just like, well, we're waiting for this one guy to come along. He's going to do this thing, and then the world is going to be saved. And oh my God, it's you that's doing this. That is that prophecy person who's going to go and he's going to do the thing. He's going to save the kingdom. It's it's not like I don't think that's not going to happen when this movie starts out, but with a prophecy, like, well, I know exactly how this movie is now going to go because it's going to just follow the prophecy that they just said. Anyways, it
The,
just bums me out. I don't like the whole prophecy thing.
the only I think I'll agree with that. I think the one thing this movie did well in its setup is that August or whatever, or wherever the prophecy pops up, they don't tell you that it's going to work. They just tell you that something really big is going to happen. So
Mm-hmm.
you're either going to get, everything you want, or you're going to get nothing. so that at least there's still some
Yeah.
remaining tension as you get to the end. But yeah, I think that as a culture, we detest the idea of determinism. So any story where you're like, well, I know it's going to end, makes
Hmm.
it feel a little bit like a grind.
Well,
And now we're
it's
trying to
yeah.
subvert that so much that you know it's never going to end the way you think it's going to end. So then it becomes its own. I don't know. It's just a
Maybe
mess.
it is this weird like rejection I'm starting to have against individualism, which is it's like it probably takes more people, and I think it shouldn't be just like this one person who actually
Mhm.
was the person who puts the shard in
Well, that's
who
why
gets
we like the
recognition.
Matrix so much, right?
Hmm.
Because it's not
It's a
that
group.
Neo's the only one, right?
Exactly.
He's
That's how they
the
finally subvert
one.
that. I think we
Yeah.
talk about that, right? It's like normally I hate prophecies, but at least this one goes the extra mile. I was like, actually, I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
I need more people to make this work.
I mean, how's that in Blade Runner 2049?
Mm,
The idea that the anti-hero is not even the main character at the end is fascinating,
right.
right? Those are intelligent people trying to break
Right.
this stereotype.
The stereotype
But
down.
yeah,
I think, but
five stars, by the way,
even
when we
with
get
that,
to Blade Runner. I don't know if I mentioned that.
yeah, that you
So
are horny for Blade Runner, but even discounting that, let's just say like, okay, taking out the prophecy thing, I just feel that the whole quest journey is just far too easy
yeah,
for this character.
kind of like
I think
walks
that
through it. Yeah.
the biggest example of that is at the very end. You know, so many films out there. I'm not saying this is like necessarily the right way to do it, but the ones that I enjoy the most, there's like, oh, they figured out how to do it, but something blocks them. And then, okay, we're gonna change our plans, and now we're gonna do this, and it gets blocked. And then finally, they have to
Oh,
dig
it's in
down, and they do
there.
this. And
You
this is
know.
just like here, and he just throws it, and then she puts it in, and that's all it
No,
really
no,
is.
no. There's, like they got to sneak in, but that creepster, and then he collapses the roof on him, and then he's got to resurrect himself, and she's got to overcome the. I mean, there are
Maybe
the beats are still in there, but I agree with you. Like they don't,
I think it's just
the
so
impact is lost
unsatisfying the way
somewhere.
this film
Yeah, there's
concludes.
something about it that it doesn't. Maybe it's like Gandhi, where we didn't feel like the crescendo enough, where
Hmm.
the stakes weren't higher each time a crisis came up. So you get this almost like a plot what do you call it, exhaustion. So like
Hmm.
in the last 5 minutes you're like, well, yeah, it's a prophecy, I know they're going to fix the fucking
I guess
crystal.
it's,
So
I mean,
it's
maybe
it's a tough one.
unfair or not, but just using the whole like Star Wars example, they go on, they're trying to save the princess. They're in the trash compactor. It's like, how are they going to get out of this one? And oh, now there's a monster in the trash compactor. How are they going to defeat this thing? And then even when they go back and they're in the fighters and stuff, it like takes 3 tries before he actually hits it the right mark, right? And
Well,
then he
not only
finally
that,
gets
but
it.
you know what makes that amazing, I think, is that they allude that the climax is going to be saving Alderaan,
Hmm.
and then they lose the fucking planet. So it's like,
Right.
that's what that crescendo is like, where you break your idea of a finale until we get your next idea of how this thing should end. And there's something about this, maybe it's because it's prophetic, where we know the end is going to be the crystal thing. So maybe
Hmm.
they needed to put it in and have one more battle after that. I don't know. Our rewrite class is murky in this film because yeah, Kyle, I mean it's a puppet movie, so it's hard to rewrite. It's for kids,
Maybe.
right?
I will say though, in the positive end of things, I love everything that the Skeksis do. I could
Yeah.
stay in that world even longer. I think they're great. I
It's
think
because
they're
you're
so
gross. Just
craven and gross and disgusting, and they're just like slurping down live
anybody
animals.
who's into horror movies, you got to question. You got to question their
Well,
personality,
on the
their
flip
value
side,
system.
like the heroes, I
Yeah.
actually love everything when they're in the swamp. I think that whole thing is great. The whole sequence is fun. Them riding on those weird like four-legged beast things
Walking, yeah,
are cool. The
bandits.
I always forget what the little animal dude's name.
Growler,
Fizzywig,
Fezzik, Fezziv, Fizzik,
Fizzgig.
Fizzgig.
I love his little mouth, like bah. That's
Yeah,
such a good like
like the
Muppet like
Muppet. Yeah,
freak out sort of thing. So all that stuff, big fan of. And I think those are
gold.
the
It's
elements of
gold
like,
here.
okay, yeah, this feels like a real world. This feels like I don't know,
Yeah,
an enticing movie that I'm sitting down to watch. And then some of the other pieces that connect those just don't 100% do it for me.
yeah, it's immersive, and they do a great job. Like, yeah, when they're in the bog or whatever, it's not like they went on location to a bog. It looks like they've constructed this out of
Constructed
the
it, yeah.
same, puppet aesthetic, right? Same with the castle. It's constructed so that it matches the tone of the weird monsters and the Skeksis bird, vulture, or whatever
Hmm.
beings. I love the idea of the aesthetics and the Skeksis being mirrors of each other, because in the end
Yeah.
they are
They
in
have to
fact two,
form into each other, right?
yeah, two polars of one being. And I love the idea of like one gets wounded and the other guy's wounded, and
Yeah. One gets killed,
those are
one
great.
disappears, right?
Yeah, those are great sort of nods to yeah, almost Taoist. I don't know, like just really neat um spiritual concepts of
Oh
a
yeah,
universe
we're
where
gonna get
everything's
into some more
interconnected.
spirituality talk here, Dave. If you don't know the backstory of how this movie was written,
All
which is
right.
fascinating. So let's do that. Let's talk about some backstory here. So this movie opened up on December 17th, 1982. So it's a Christmas movie, basically.
Yeah.
A movie you might say that was marketed towards families with children. It's rated
By the
3 points.
production company, maybe. This thing's a mess. Can you imagine watching this for Christmas?
I know. What was the other movie that came out? Was it Rambo that came out around Christmas time, which I think is weird. Anyways, doesn't matter. Um, it's
I mean,
rated
if your
three
kids
point.
are all coked up, it's 1982. I
It
guess
is.
you have
Everyone
to,
has like
yeah.
contact eyes, and the lead is still there in the air from the 70s. And it's rated 3.6 out of 5 on Letterboxd. It has a 7.1 out of 10 on IMDb. Has a 66 on Metacritic. And on Rotten Tomatoes, from 48 critics, it stands at a 77%. And from 100,000 plus users, it's at an 81%. So this is a certified fresh film.
Big numbers, big
It
numbers.
is available on DVD and Blu-ray, and you can currently purchase or rent it on iTunes and YouTube. Its budget, I would say not surprisingly, with the tech that you see on display, was $25 million.
This is why there's no innovation in this. It's not cheap, man.
It's not cheap, no. Its box office would be $41 million. So it did
That's why
it was considered slight
they
uh
didn't make another one.
well, okay, we'll get into that too. uh, uh anyways, it was considered a success, like a moderate success, like it just made, but like adjusted for inflation, it's like a movie making $126 million today. Its plot description, this is how you should have described it to that small kid who's now crying in the felt store. On another planet in the distant past, a Gelfling embarks on a quest to find the missing shard of a magical crystal and to restore order to his world. That's how
Okay.
it's described. But Dave, that does mean that we are now ready to play everybody's favorite game, Guess That Tag. This is, of course, the time where I put on my handsome blazer. I pick up this long Bob Barker-like microphone, and we go into the movies all the time. Maybe you are interested in seeing another weird movie, maybe that features a genie, like 1,000 Years of Longing. Maybe that's the movie you're going out to see. And you go to the movie theater and you're greeted with a big, long, I know you're saying you have no idea what the fuck I'm talking
No,
about,
it's
but
Idris Elba and Tilda
mhm,
Swinton. But I thought you'd make fun of me with Tom Cruising. We're watching our third consecutive Mission Impossible film.
Jesus
So,
Christ. Okay, well, the mission just got more impossible.
how many
Uh,
times can you be disavowed before it's really just,
the thing
you
about
know,
the funny fact I think about all those Mission Impossible movies is like every single one has the plots like, well, there's a mole in this organization and they're going rogue. I was like, how many times does this have to happen before you like just clean out
this is
everybody?
this is the power of Tom Cruise,
Mhm.
Kyle. They're all still good.
They're great. I love
Unlike
those movies. They're
unlike the
good.
Bond films where,
All right, Mr. Anti-Bond over here thinks every
no,
Bond is
when they're good,
bad.
they're great. But sometimes just like why can't it just work every time? How come
Hmm.
Tom can make four in a row that actually work and Bond just can't? Isn't that
Why
weird?
can Tom Cruise make 5 bangers in a row and you can't? Anyways,
I mean,
you agree with this whole long row of posters telling you about all these movies. They have all these fancy visuals, but there's a line of text is there to entice you to watch these movies. And so what I have done is that one of these is the actual tagline that appeared on the poster to the Dark Crystal, and the other two are completely made up by me. So Dave, here are your 3 options. Is it or was it the crystal holds the power, but will they be able to survive the darkness? Is it from the mind of Jim Henson comes a new fantastical tale? Or is it another world Another Time in the Age of Wonder.
Oh, they'll suck. Just kind of
Thanks.
like, which puppet has a hand so far up its ass? Two. I think
From the
Henson is
mind of Jim
famous.
Henson comes a new fantastical tale.
Sure.
Incorrect.
Mm,
It's
mm.
actually number three. Another World, Another Time in the Age of Wonder, which tells you nothing.
Nothing. Yeah,
Literally
terrible. Yeah.
nothing. But regardless, that is the tagline of this movie. It
Okay.
stars Jim Henson as Jen and various other voices, Catherine Mullen as Kira, Frank Oz as Aughra and various other voices, and Dave Gells as Fizgig. Anything you want to say about these actors?
No, I didn't really look it up. I mean, I knew that Jim. Sorry, I clicked. I knew that Jim Henson died prematurely. I always thought it was cancer, but we
Mm-hmm.
just looked it up. He died of strep,
Yes.
toxic shock, which is depressing. So that's not a good way to go.
So go and get
Uh,
medicated when you have strep throat.
strep throat. Yeah. Kyle was alluding that he may have not got medicated, but I didn't dig deep enough to
Yeah.
verify that.
That I don't know if that
Yeah.
was just made up by me or if that's something I
Oh
actually did here.
no, possible. I mean, I've had strep throat. I didn't die of toxic shock, so something happened. It was 3 weeks later, so
Mm-hmm.
ample time to have a doctor perhaps prescribe a antibiotic. But who knows? It could have been something else. But that's too bad
This is probably the
because
problem
he
with
wasn't
taking
that
your
old.
medical advice from Professor Bunsen. It's probably the worst person to do that.
Oh, man, he was out, so he just asked Beaker. Yeah, sorry. Let me. Yeah, it was like six. Was he
Professor
64 when he
Bunsen
died?
Honeydew, I should say. I should say his full Christian
Wow.
name.
Nerd. Yeah, it was like only 64, around 64. So that's pretty young. I think he could have graced you with yet another puppet film that would have uh sated your appetite for felt.
Hey,
Yeah.
you joke, but I honestly think he probably would have. He would have tried to do something like
Yeah, of
bonkers
course.
crazy. There is
Oh, they made a lot of Muppet
there's
movies.
a
A lot
graphic
more than I
novel.
realized.
There's a graphic novel that I bought. It's hardcover. Came
It's
out in
hardcover. What a
the
nerd.
I know,
Okay.
whatever.
It
Came out
has
and
to
I'm gonna
show
say
off.
like came
First
out in
edition is a signed. What else would you like
no,
to?
because it
You know
came
the
out in
ISBN number? Okay.
I think it came out in like 2010, maybe 2011. It's called
Okay.
Tales of Sand. And it was a script that he was working on. And you say that this is about an LSD trip? Like, holy fuck, is this an LSD trip? Because it's a guy who like finds himself in the desert and he's like chased by a lion and like, oh, this crazy shit happens. But it's cool, it's fun. And it's basically someone just illustrated a storyboard based on the screenplay that he had written, but he didn't get to film
Oh,
it
I
because
see.
before he
Okay.
died is
Okay.
what the comic book is. So he was working on like radical weird stuff that he wanted to
Well,
do.
look, if you're famous for creating lifelike puppets, you're not a normal guy. God,
Well, sure.
you're
That is
he's
actually the
probably a
biggest
super
thing.
weird guy. Yeah.
Because if I mean, when's the last time you were at Disneyland?
Land never.
Oh,
Disney
okay.
World, I was probably 8.
Yeah, okay. So mine was, I don't know, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And I mean, everyone can laugh if you go to like, say, the Tiki Room or the Hall of Presidents. It's like, okay, some old animatronics. But if you go to the new Star Wars land, the animatronics in there are like bonkers. I thought it was a real person up in front of me for like a short minute. Like, wait a
Like
second. No, that's an
robots or
animatronic.
something? Uh-huh.
Like, yeah, like full articulation, like very small, minute things. I feel like that's maybe where he would have started to go towards, which is
Well, he was
maybe
already
not,
kind of there. Yeah.
maybe not animatronic specifically, but so refined, articulated puppetry that it's like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe what you're getting away with just these elements.
Finger puppets. Yeah.
Again, CG and that type of thing would still have come no matter what. But I do wonder how that would have impacted the implementation
Mm.
of that as a form. I think it would
Yeah, we'll
have.
never know. I mean,
We'll
the
never
company
know.
still exists, but yeah, it's gone by the wayside. But looking at the budget for this, that's the other problem. I I think it's just too expensive, Kyle. I just
Well, maybe, but it's not like CGI is not expensive. Like
CGI is well, yeah, but that's like a market driven thing. I my cynical side, I don't believe that the Avengers actually should cost $200 million.
well,
I think
that's
that's
fair enough, but
yeah. So how much of that is CGI? Well, they'll say it's $150 million to make it look cool, but I don't know. There's a lot of shadiness in
mhm.
that cost. It is exceptionally difficult and takes thousands of people to animate a film, of course, but physically constructing, and they're going to have different puppets for different cameras. It's not going to be just one unit, especially for a film like this. There's going to be one where they're doing close-ups. It's not going to be the same puppet as when they're walking down the hallway. So it's just fascinating to think about. What if we should look at, did they scale the halls when they needed to walk just so they could put a person in the
Yeah,
suit?
I didn't look it up. My guess is that there is that sort of thing going on. Some of them were like scaled down, some of them were bigger, larger than life. So they just filmed different scenes. This is like I couldn't find out like quote unquote like what Jim Henson directed and what Frank Oz directed. Were they there the whole time, or was one taking this section, one was taking this section, sort of thing? But my guess is that was probably maybe what it was. Maybe Frank Oz was doing like all the Skeksis stuff. Jim Henson was doing all the small, minute stuff over here. Don't know. I have no idea. But that would be my guess, is how they probably diverted the roles.
Both get credit for it. Yeah.
Cinematography is by a man named Oswald Morris. This would actually be his last film, his last cinematography that he would do. I tried to read it. I didn't quite understand what they were talking about, but apparently it wasn't like a unique thing, but he brought his like own like gels and filters to specifically make certain colors pop and to make a more dreamlike look to the film. So that was all him coming in and making that filmed that way.
Yeah.
But his top 4 from IMDb, his other films that he was a cinematographer for, was Oliver from 1968, The Man Who Would Be King from 1975, Sleuth, one of my favorite films, from 1972, and Fiddler on the Roof from 1971, which we talked about last season.
Slouch. Yeah,
no, he made good-looking films. He knew what he was doing. This is written by David Odell, story by Jim Henson, directed by Jim Henson and Frank Oz. So we need to start way, way back, Dave. Did you read up on what part of the inspiration was for this movie?
No, you told me not to, so I'm
ready. Don't break the fiction. You didn't do your homework and you didn't read up on it.
Yes. I, as usual, decided to not do anything.
Are you familiar with a book called Seth Material?
No.
Okay. Well, there was this book called Seth Material, written by Jane Roberts. As described in the article that I read, Jane Roberts was an author, pretty cool, poet, pretty awesome, a psychic, all right, and a spirit medium.
Nice.
It's an oh boy moment for me.
Thing? Yeah. Psychic and spirit.
A psychic can read the future. A spirit medium talks with spirits that are around you.
People, yeah, like in Ghost. Whoopi did that.
Yeah, that's correct. She would take on the personality of a being called Seth. I like that it's called Seth, which is what it is. So it's material from Seth material. Now we're having a little bit of fun here.
Like it doesn't stand-up bit or something.
Sure, fine, whatever. But we're having fun. We're having fun here. But it does sound like she had a pretty rotten life, like being abused by her mother as she grew up. So it's not a great thing. Yeah. But she did find this success as a charlatan, which is really fun for her. My biases are showing through.
What? Just threw that out there. Wow. There's a show Helen was watching. I was so upset. There's a medium now that's got his own Netflix show who talks to others, and I was like, look,
awful. I hate it.
I appreciate the idea of someone putting kind words for grieving people, but it's not real.
It's all bullshit, and I hate it.
And then I was asked to leave the room politely. So
it's like, all right, I have to go watch The Dark Crystal. Anyway, so she publishes this book called Seth Material. This book becomes one of the cornerstones of New Age philosophy, like the woo-woo stuff from the 70s, which still is today. It's still around. But it's in this book that the whole concept of channeling became into the popular culture. Cool. So you're channeling a spirit and then talking through them. So this is basically going to inspire every possession movie and story from that time forward. It wasn't technically a single book. It was a collection of writings that were published in various places from 1963 to 1984. So she would become imbued with the spirit of Seth. She would speak a bunch of nonsense, and her husband would transcribe it for her.
It's clearly not nonsense. It inspired some of your favorite films.
Sure enough, there's like directly inspired The Exorcist. But it also contains stuff about reincarnation, karma, past lives, what happens after death, the nature of good and evil.
Sounds like some good old-fashioned appropriation. That's okay. Yeah.
The core teachings, though, are based on the principles that consciousness creates matter, that each person creates his or her own reality through thoughts, beliefs, and expectation. Oh, sorry. That each person creates his or her own reality through thoughts, beliefs, and expectations, and that the point of power through which the individual can affect change is in the present moment. That is what Jim Henson was being influenced by, and is what the undercurrent of this movie is. Like, it literally, he says this straight up, that he had everyone, the writer, he had got Frank Oz and a bunch of the cast to read this book before they even started shooting, because he wanted it all to be imbued with these ideas.
Seth was basically a Zen monk. What's his name? Probably the fella.
So
the one that popularized Zen Buddhism in America came in around that time.
Yeah.
Mid-60s.
Well, that's such a 70s thing too, right? Like the mysticism a bit,
yeah.
and like
Hollywood picked him
up.
Oh
my God.
Because yeah.
Whether the people in at the beginning of Airplane, they get punched out.
No, they're not Jainists.
Hare Krishnas, like that whole thing was popular then too. So this is a great big inspiration for the Dark Crystal, but he also created the Muppets because he thought he could make puppets popular. Here's like super crazy condensed history of that. So he's tinkering around with puppetry. This is Jim Henson tinkering around with puppetry in the late 60s and early 70s. And
Seth entered him.
And he was, I'm going to speak like a pig. Actually, no, he would speak like Kermit. Like sorry. Frank Oz was Miss Piggy.
Listen, Kyle, it's not easy.
It's not easy being seen. Now, he finds a collaborator in Frank Oz, and the obvious first step is to create content for children. So Sesame Street debuts in 1969, still on television today. Their stated goal, the bus is going by. Their stated goal with Sesame Street was they wanted to master the addictive qualities of television and do something good with them. So teaching people how to read, etc. There's a great documentary, Sesame Gang, I think is what it's called, about the whole history of Sesame Street that came, I think, last year, which I highly recommend. Because also one of the big things was helping inner city youth with that kind of stuff, because they weren't getting it at schools necessarily. Anyways,
it's nothing not necessarily about it. It's a proven bias. Minorities do not get taught how to read in America.
1,000%. Which is why they also had a lot of Black characters on that show, like Cubans and stuff
Latino,
like that. And Latinos and that sort of thing.
Not a lot of Asians, but that's okay. We came later.
Yeah, but were there really any Asians in 1970s America, Dave? Come on.
It's not like they brought the Asian people over to build a fucking country or anything like that.
I'm pretty sure they all got blown up when they made the railroad. So, now we're going to get letters, me specifically. Next step, Henson wants to see if he can create something with puppets that would be more geared towards adults. That's when he comes across this edition of Lewis Carroll's poetry specifically. Not Alice in Wonderland, but the poetry that Lewis Carroll wrote.
Yeah, if we want to talk about LSD, we're going to talk about Lewis Carroll. So I was right, basically. Yeah.
You think everything is drug related, Dave? Stop it.
It kind of is.
This particular edition has these illustrations by Leonard B. Lubin. And specifically, they call out that there were these pictures of crocodiles wearing these fancy robes and jewelry, which would eventually lead to the Skeksis. Like, that is basically what those are in real life. But he takes these ideas that are floating around of like, I want to create something like this alien world. I like these illustrations. So he takes some of that idea and spins it into the land of Gorch, which, if you've ever watched the first season of Saturday Night Live, like I have, you'll remember that there were sketches that included these Muppets every so often, and was kind of the precursor to the Dark Crystal. You can check them out. I don't know if they're like the best out there, to be really honest. Someone who would agree with me were the writers of Saturday Night Live, because they fucking hated writing for these puppets. So After the first season, Henson and Oz and the show's producers part ways, which allows them to then go and focus on The Muppet Show, which debuts in 76 and runs to 1981. So they run for those 5 seasons, becomes this huge cultural phenomenon, right? Sesame Street was popular, The Muppets become even more popular. The Muppet movie comes out in 1979. So Henson is basically riding high. He has this chance for like a bit of a blank check because studios are coming to him like, what do you want to make? And so he was like, well, I've had this idea that I've been trying to make work for like the past 10 years or so. So he takes that idea of the alien world with no humans, combines it with the aesthetic of those drawings and the mission of making it dark and scary like the original Grimm's fairy tales, as I told you, because he felt that it was unhealthy for children to never be afraid. And then, of course, with the undercurrent of the new agey, like Seth materials as a worldview. That's what all these influences are. They're coming together to make this movie. Henson is the one who comes up with the main story, like the beats that the story is going to go through, writes this little bit of a treatment, but hands that off to David Odell to actually write the script. Henson had directed some television episodes and specials, including Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas.
Oh, yes. Good old Emmett.
Emmett, yeah. Have you ever watched that special?
No, of course not.
Oh my god, no! It's just iconic, and they parried it in a Goofy movie, but it's great.
Wow.
This is only the second feature he directed, though. He had done The Great Muppet Caper the year before.
Yes.
Gets help from Frank Oz to direct certain scenes, but this would be Oz's first directed film, his first. So we'll have to put it on our first time directors list here at the end of the episode.
All right.
Its release is considered successful, but was kind of met with mixed to somewhat negative reviews at the time, but has grown definitely to be far more favorably looked back on. Current reviews are like very, very high, as we already talked about, becoming one of the touchstones of 80s genre filmmaking. There was an attempt to make a sequel to this movie. There was a planned sequel, but that falls through. And I guess regardless on anyone else's feelings on the film, regardless on what anyone's feelings are on the film, I think it's hard to say that it hasn't seeped into popular culture. So I'm going to run down the list. There was a board game that was made out of this, an illustrated children's book version, a book and cassette adaptation, a 1983 video game that was made for the Apple II, comic books, book prequels, a manga series, songs that have referenced the film. A role-playing game is being developed that's going to be set in the world of the Dark Crystal. There's an intention for the Royal Opera House in London to develop a ballet on this property. And of course, there was the Netflix prequel series that was released a few years ago. You didn't watch it at all? The prequel series?
It's probably still on my watch list. It
was pretty well reviewed. Like, people really didn't enjoy it. People are going to hate me so much. I didn't finish it. I got halfway through and I was like, I'm fine. I don't need to. There was some, again, just like the movie, some isolated moments I was enjoying, but like, it's like
I don't care.
5 more episodes that are an hour long, and I don't want to watch this anymore. I find it a struggle to like. I would go like 2 weeks between episodes. I'm like, I'm obviously not enjoying this, so why am I forcing myself to watch this?
Well, I'll go one step further. It took me 3 sittings to watch this 90-minute film. Like, I fell asleep watching it. And I think that I guess the first thing that popped out to my head, you were saying, when this movie was released, it didn't fare well critically, and I guarantee you it's because people in 1982 did not think this was a kids movie. Because that expectation is what's going to sour any kind of praise for the puppeteering and the cinematography and the tone. Because as soon as you think you're going to watch The Muppets or Sesame Street,
sure,
you're going to have nightmares, because this is the inverse of that. The other thing about we run into this so much, this reappraisal by culture and cult favorites and all this stuff.
Well, I have no problem with that. But
no, I'm saying this is the box. Like, you end up looking at people talking to each other about why they still like something that is considered dumb. And I think it's a problematic part of not the modern culture, but just human language that, you and I, we watch films, a lot of films, but we get a lot of hate for some of the things we say about certain films. because they're these little pockets and there's no good forum anymore of people to just share ideas. We end up kind of in these little echo chambers. So with cult favorites, I think that's a really big danger. The people who are going to prize Dark Crystal as like a classic film, do I trust their opinion about film in general?
So
Right?
I won't
Come
go
on.
that far, maybe, but
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
I think maybe what we don't do a great job sometimes stating plainly. I feel like it should be obvious, but maybe it's not. Obviously, this is coming from our two worldviews, our
Yeah.
upbringing, like our
It's just
points
our
of
opinion.
view. So it's like if we like or dislike, and or if we disagree, sometimes I like and you don't like. That's usually what it
Well,
is.
when you're wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. That's just coming from our points of view. If this is like your favorite movie of all time, that's great. Awesome. Enjoy the movie and everything it is. But from my point of view, I think there's a reason why, yes, it was not looked upon favorably at the time, and why I don't think it's even one of the best Jim Henson made things. Like there's
No.
so many other great examples of what Jim Henson could
Well,
do.
mechanically, some of the best work,
Oh yeah, yeah,
but
that
as a
that for
film,
sure.
like as a story, come on. I mean, I don't know.
I think that's why maybe other people have come across, they've been influenced, right? Like, absolutely, I can understand how you could make a comic book, it's set in this world and have like
Yeah.
amazing things happen. Of course, write a book
Yeah.
about
It's
it.
lots of cool
They've made
textures
something
and
cool
stuff.
that you could like build a better story with. But as it stands, I
And the
think that
lore.
there's
Yeah, the
limitations
lore
to this
that
movie.
they allude to at the beginning of this film. It's great, right? This like closed circle. I mean, you see that in fantasy books all the time. The Wheel of Time, this idea
Yeah.
that history of repeating itself and these fatal moments because we know how they're going to converge. I mean, Norwegian myth was like that, right? The snake eating its tail, and
Hmm.
this is an age-old concept of fantasy writing and myth, which is great. And I can absolutely understand someone watching this, reading about it, and wanting to do something with it. I just didn't want to sit with it as a film. I appreciated the technical elements. I think there's some really cool philosophical ideas. I've been really dealing in my mind a lot with the idea of determinism and my
Hmm.
relationship with reality. I mean, you brought up Seth talking
Hmm.
about the power of one's perception to kind of like couch or seat themselves in their reality. I think that stuff's very interesting for conversation. And this film tries to tackle some of it, not
Yeah.
in a long conversation, but pokes at it. But that's the problem. It doesn't go into the abstract philosophical discussion. It's not a kid's film. It tries to be a little bit not horror, but grotesque.
Grotesque.
And
Yeah.
then in the end, it's over.
I think my other issue with the prequel series specifically is that it is a prequel series.
Hmm.
I just
Just you're over it.
I just have a big issue with prequels
Yeah.
in and of
Just let it go.
themselves.
Just
Just
write a
give
new
me
story.
what happens next. I don't care what happened before. Give me what happens next.
Yeah.
That's what I care about.
Yeah, if it's a circle, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to be like they're going to live happily ever after. The
Right.
thing's
Yeah.
going to go
Yeah.
to shit
Or
again.
maybe the
So,
darkness wants to return. Like that's an interesting
yeah.
story. Like you've
What
just
if we
saved the
get the
world.
birth of the next skepsis or whatever they're called?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, this you can do a lot with it. Yeah.
Anything else you want to bring up? Any notes that you wrote down?
I don't write notes anymore, Kyle. We've been doing this for
Come
three
on.
years, and I realized it doesn't help. I
Oh, that
still
helps
sound
me
like an
because there's
angry
always
asshole.
something that I forget.
Um, Let me think.
Can I just, this is another, this is not really a negative. I'm just going to say just a little note that they put down that's always curious to me, which is why Gelflings? Like why is
The
that the
word?
name, the
Oh,
actual word that they chose to use? I mean, obviously
mm.
they're not
Like Swamp Thing. They're
humans. I
probably
get
like,
it because they have,
oh, are they elves? We can't say elves.
yeah,
Let's
that's what
call
I
them
mean. It's like
gelfs, right? Maybe.
this. I don't know. It's just it's one of those weird things. This is like a sweeping criticism I know like fantasy gets, which is like, well, we can't call it a dog. It has to be like a Narflax. I'm like, you can just call it a dog. Like stop,
Huh.
stop calling it some weird name.
Narflex is fine. I get it.
Hmm.
You don't get it? Narflex.
Yeah. But on the other hand, Skeksis is a word that is like they look the way that that word sounds to me.
That's true.
If you say Skeksis, like, yeah, it's a big weird alligator thing. Of course it is.
I'm clicking the links here on Wikipedia to see if it's actually a word
Hmm.
because the other ones are called aesthetics, and that's a real word. Like, why am I wrong? Are they not called aesthetics? Hold on a second. Mystics. They're called mystics. Like,
Mystics, yeah.
why not? I mean, I don't know what the counterpoint of a mystic is. The cynic, the evil cynics. I don't know. The pragmatists,
Yeah, yeah.
the empiricists. I don't know. I guess you can call them Skeksis. But
anyways, one of my weird things about naming things in fantasy films. Although I do think, again, talking about character design, love that they do kind of look, alligator-like, but also like vultures at the same time. I think it's, anyways, great
I got
character
more
design.
bird.
Great character
I got
design.
more bird for it. It's fun, like classism, the idea that not Proctor, whatever the guy that's kicked out, his punishment is to be disrobed and humiliated. I was watching Paddington, and that scene where the expert explorer in the flashback is kicked out of the British Archaeological Society, and they're like, they take his pin and they're like, everybody turn your backs to him, and they all turn because that's the most offensive thing in British. So it had that moment. I had a good giggle there because some political undertones in all artist writings of this era.
Like I was saying about how like Frank Oz and Jim Henson have like the certain voices and there's like variations. The main Skeksis sounds so much like Grover to me. There's like, well, that's just Grover. It's a Skeksis. Anyways,
well, Agra is basically a female Yoda. I mean, there's like,
I know it's like very, very small differences, but
So
she's just not speaking in backwards weird talk, but
she is speaking oddly, and the tone is exactly the same.
I do like the moment of her like having her wings and they fly out and she catches them. It's like, you have wings?
You're a boy.
It's like, what? Yeah, you're a boy. It's like, why don't I have wings? It's like, you're a boy. The Garfield, like the crab guys, are definitely terrifying. Like those are like definitely terrifying creature designs.
You can tell they had a cockroach problem in America because they were like, what's the grossest thing that could be a soldier? What if we take cockroaches and we make them super big and they're like robots and they're only designed to cut you in half? Great.
Let's bring up something that's going to alienate most of our audience because it's very localized to here in Calgary. Did you hear about the cockroach infestation at the Core shopping mall?
At the Core? I heard about a public housing unit in Bridgeland that just got condemned, but I did not hear about the Core. Tell me about the Core. There are cockroaches.
They're all over it. Like the actual health ministry had to come in and tell
the whole mall
to get rid of it. Yeah. Mostly because I think they can hide out in the garden area there, the botanical gardens.
Cockroaches.
Because apparently cockroaches they can't live in Canada for very long because of how cold it gets.
Right.
So they have to find something very warm to live in.
I wonder. I mean, I don't know. I was watching this TED Talk video about cockroaches, and like all insects, there's thousands of species, and most of them are fairly benign. But the ones that adapt to humans are like basically indestructible, and it's gross.
Yeah, they are disgusting.
Yeah.
Also, what's disgusting is the fact that she uses moss to like help his like bite wound. I'm like, well, that's just going to lead to more infection.
Well, if Swamp Thing taught us anything, no,
that's right.
The power
water. Of the swamp will heal you. Okay. Well, the machine has said that we do have to wrap things up here, so we might as well get into critics' choice. This is when we look at what the critics were thinking at the time this movie was released. Here's the very weird thing. Neither Roger Ebert or Pauline Kael had a written review for this movie, which I thought was very weird that they didn't. But so these are much more recent reviews I picked from. First, I'm going to go to Tasha Robinson from the AV Club, who I like. She's a great critic. She gave a positive review. I don't know how many stars or thumbs up or whatever she gave, but she said, I just went to Rotten Tomatoes this time instead of Letterboxd. So this is just like a condensed version of what their whole review is in like 2 sentences. But she wrote, the story is a standard fairy tale concoction, but the new agey philosophy about healing and heroism makes for a classic Henson story. All heart and rapturous wonder at the world's incredible possibilities. That was Tasha Robinson's review.
Can they hear the face I'm making?
Yeah, you're scrunching it up. Yeah, it's like that's a good Agra impression that you just doing there.
In layman's terms, in lay people's terms, what was she trying to say?
What do you mean? What is she trying to say? She said she liked it because it was a classic fairy tale.
Okay, all right.
It's like you use one word that's 3 syllables. You're like, well, I have no idea what this critic is saying. They're trying to use highfalutin language to try and make their point.
If it has 3 syllables, then yes, they are.
Okay. Well, here, let me break it down to you. Let me dumb it down here for you, Dave. For Dave Kerr of the Chicago Reader. Me no like this movie. No, he says, Henson and Oz designed and directed this 1982 film in which no human actors appear except as crude long shot doubles for the animated figures. It's a cute gimmick, but the puppets are so stiff and inexpressive that the film drops dead.
Wow. On Wikipedia it says Gene Siskel gave it 2.5 stars. Resultant absence of dramatic tension cripples Crystal, which doesn't have much going on.
That's kind of what we said, right? There really is. I wish the story line of him getting to the crystal was better.
Walked in from the bar scene in Star Wars. In fact, a lot of this movie looks like it was ripped off from Star Wars. Take it easy, Gene. Wow, just cool your jets, bro. And he's right, because we keep talking about Yoda. I mean,
yeah. I was talking with I was on TikTok the other day, and I was served a video because I often am of Siskel and Ebert on Letterman. And it must have been early 90s because they're talking about Free Willy, which Gene Siskel hated. It was like, you can't see the eyes. They're too far apart. I can like something where you can't see their eyes. Like, he was like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? So funny.
How do they see?
Huh. Anyways, we have to answer the question we ask each week. Does this hold up, and is it still culturally relevant?
I don't know. I don't think it holds up that well. I think we can appreciate the technological awesomeness. But I just feel like the film feels old, and I don't know why. It would suck to just blame the Gelfling, but there's something about it that's still flat.
It's hard because this whole aesthetic of early 80s films is something I love. So
I know.
Yeah, it is old, but it's like I like that. I'm going to do a weird answer because I normally don't answer it in this way, which is, do I think it holds up? No, but weirdly I do think it's culturally relevant.
Yeah,
I still think it is.
I think
it's seeped too far into popular culture to not be relevant still.
It's a weird thing that whether people have seen it or not, I presume, I know whether people have seen it or not in our age, if you say Dark Crystal, they'll know there's a puppet movie.
Yeah.
I think, maybe late millennials and the Zers, whatever, they probably have never even conceptualized the idea of a Dark Crystal because it doesn't hold that much impact. Whereas you could probably say Fight Club, and somebody who's like 17 might have heard of Brad Pitt's beautiful hip bones, right?
Yeah.
So, like on the street, I see people wearing Fight Club t-shirts still. So I think it's not culturally relevant in that sense, but it has cultural impact. So I'm kind of with you. Dating ourselves, really.
All right. Well, that is what we do need to rate this film, of course. But before we do, that's what Dave and I thought. But we'd love to know what you think. You can send any feedback to Kyle and Dave vsthemachine@gmail.com. You also find us on Twitter or Instagram with the handle KDVSTM. We also released me and Ron Burgundy over here. We release videos on YouTube occasionally, and you can go and find us over there. If you want to see the entire list of films we've watched and the ratings we've given, you can go to our Letterboxd page, letterboxd.com/KDVSTM. And if you want to support us monetarily so that we can continue doing this podcast and not usher in the next apocalypse, you can go to our Patreon page. There's a link in the show notes of this episode. You can support us for as low as $1 per month. Something that you can do for absolutely free is to leave a rating and review on whatever app you use for podcasts. By the way, we should do this pretty soon. I believe that with 100 subscribers, we can actually change our URL.
Yeah, we agreed on Dragon.
It should be youtube.com/KDVSTM is what it should be. But
we'll sure we agreed on Dragon Alert.
So let's get to the review of this movie. Dave, out of 5, what are you going to rate The Dark Crystal?
That's a weird one. I'm going to be pleasant about it and give it a 3.
Whoa.
I feel like it's a bit middling, but
I thought for sure you were going like 2.5, honestly.
I know. I am. My gut tells you 2.5, but I don't know. When we talk about the technological part and all the performances,
those really are
great. The Gelflings, everything other than the Gelflings actually is not that bad. I just fell asleep because the Gelflings are in the movie the whole time.
Sure. Well, Dave, I am giving it the exact same rating. I can't believe that we are aligned on this. I thought for sure I was going to be like so much higher than you. That is going to, I guess, average to 3. So going up through our list here, Dave, do you think this is better or worse than Conan the Barbarian?
I think it's worse. Yeah. I don't know why, but Okay, what's the next one? Just so that we
Well,
can
the one
argue.
above that is Smithereens, the New York City movie. Remember where she's walking through?
No, I remember. I like Smithereens,
I think that yeah.
but just because I mean, it's not a better
And
movie.
the only other one is Querelle. Is the only other
Yeah,
one that it ties with. But I think I agree with you. I think all three of those films I think would be higher up for me
yeah,
personally.
yeah.
So all right.
Do we rate it too
Well,
high? Like, what's the top of the 2.5 list?
top of 2.5 well, actually would be technically 2.75,
All right,
Dave,
all right, all right.
is Losing Ground.
And then below, what's underneath Losing Ground?
Night Shift, Rocky 3, Swamp Thing.
So it's close. Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
fine. I think that's a good spot for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let
Yeah.
me just do some math
So it's
here.
like Losing
Updating the
Ground is pretty
spreadsheet.
interesting too, but it's also not a good movie.
Which?
And Losing Ground.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, entering our list at the new number 16 position is The Dark Crystal. So right above Losing Ground, right below Conan the Barbarian. I think we're in this. I was talking with the machine earlier this week, Dave. Sounds like we're in for like a run of children's films? Question mark. Somebody just push this button here.
Boop,
Oh,
boop, boop,
talk
boop.
about dark films. We're going to be watching The Secret of Nim next week.
Another
The
film. I don't
secret
think
is that all mice should die.
I don't think I'm going to let my son watch that with me either, from what I
Oh,
remember. But
come! I
I
definitely
haven't watched
watched
that
that at
movie.
like 8. I definitely did.
I think so. I just don't. I watched that when I was a kid, and I haven't watched it as an adult.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I'll have to
I
screen it
don't
first.
think I have probably seen this for over
30,
25 years.
30
I'm going to
years.
say maybe even 30 that I have
Yeah.
not seen this movie.